Welcome back to Beyond the Badge, where we take you behind the scenes of the Columbus Police Department and introduce you to the people and stories driving the work we do every day. Today, we're sitting down with Sergeant Sherman Hayes from our Violent Crimes Unit. He'll talk about a recent case that just wrapped up in court, the high clearance rate his team continues to maintain, and the cold cases that still weigh heavy on the minds of our detectives. Plus, we'll be talking about something new coming to your TV screens, only airing on Fox 54. Stick around. You'll see why this work is personal. Today, we are joined by Sergeant Sherman Hayes in our Violent Crimes Unit, and he's going to talk about a lot of things, specifically a case that just wrapped up. We were just talking about before we started recording. Let's dive right into that.
Okay.
Dontrell Williams.
A
true victim.
Victim. He's working at the Circle K as a nighttime clerk. He had just recently exited the U.S. Army. He had served our country and had enrolled in Columbus Tech and was starting school. And Circle K was just kind of a midpoint job that he had kind of fell into to kind of bring in some income. And one night, 2019, he's a victim of a murder. He's executed while working the store. A masked gunman comes in, attempts to commit a robbery, and in lieu of all that, Dontrell is just gunned down, shot multiple times, and he basically dies right there.
This happened in 2019, 6 years ago.
Yes.
And it is just now going to trial this year.
So this is one of those cases that our circuit, and this is just like across the country, kind of fell victim. The case itself kind of fell victim to the COVID. Courts, the government, the whole world shut down because of COVID. And this was a situation where we didn't have a whole lot of physical evidence linking our crime to our suspect, DeQuavian Solomon. And it took a lot of follow-up and a long time to put all the puzzle pieces together. During that time, Solomon would be locked up in Alabama for violating his parole, which basically gave us a little bit of time to put together our case in a manner that we felt would win in court. We knew we had the right guy. Everything pointed to him. And it was just a matter of getting enough evidence put together to make an arguable case in Superior Court trial. And with him being in Alabama, locked up that time, we had basically to wait till he served out that time before Muskogee County would have custody of him. So with the courts being shut down in Alabama, just like they were here and everywhere else because of COVID, it extended that whole process. And really, the victim in that is Miss Weaver. Tanya Weaver is the mother of Dontrell Williams, and I can't express how great she was through this whole process because she was patient, adamant. She wanted justice for her son,
right?
And I that's what I do this job for. My teammates, my coworkers, we do this for the mamas,
right.
And this is one of those things where she just was really patient, and a coworker, I call her part of my family, and she stood by me in court. I stood by her in court, and we got the verdict that we wanted. But yeah, COVID kind of just slowed that whole process down.
I got it. Let's go back a little bit. You talked about you knew that Solomon was the suspect, and you all had to basically build that case. What were some of the key elements?
So. The first thing when we get called out there that night, we know we're working a robbery, and that turned into a shooting. Dontrell's deceased. I was identified as lead investigator on the case. So in every single homicide, the first thing we start with is sending a detective to the hospital, which I had one of my coworkers there. I'm at the crime scene. And we start with, whether it's a residential area or business, we want to start with conducting an area canvass, trying to find witnesses who physically witness or observe something, if not the actual crime at hand, and video surveillance. Video surveillance is such a huge piece of evidence. Jurors in trial, they want to see what they see on TV. They want to see surveillance video capturing the actual incident. They want to see DNA, fingerprints. They want to see it all, and they want to. They don't really want to convict unless they get it all. So the first thing we notice on this night is we get the surveillance video, and we see that our suspect is a very tall, thick-build guy. He's wearing a Halloween mask of some sort, jacket, a reflective vest, pants, which were very unique, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But and then black Air Force Ones, and the suspect walks into the store, sees Dontrell. He's actually changing out the trash in the middle of the night by the hot dog stand, and he fires a round into the ceiling, orders Dontrell behind the counter, and orders him to open up the cash drawer. Dontrell doesn't argue, doesn't try to fight. He gathers the money into a shopping bag, a plastic shopping bag for the suspect, and the suspect then basically orders him to open up the safe, and Dontrell pleads with him that he couldn't. He had no way to open up the safe. And the suspect takes the money, starts to walk off, turns around, decides he's just going to open fire for no reason on Dontrell. Dontrell wasn't chasing him. He wasn't trying to stop him from taking the money. He did exactly what Circle K protocol was. He wasn't trying to be some sort of hero to the store. There was no other people in the store that Dontrell needed to save. It was just a malice execution. So we see that the suspect's completely covered up. I don't know if it's a white male, a black male. I'm not even certain that it's a male, just because of how tall he was and the way he walked. I was certain that it was probably a male. But we had nothing. It wasn't until hours into the investigation, the sun's coming up, that now we start getting surveillance video from the Family Dollar. And by the way, this Circle K we're speaking of is at the corner of Forest and Floyd, out in East Columbus. And it was an area that I was real familiar with because when I was in patrol, I spent most of my career out there on the East End. And that Circle K was a common stopping point for us in between calls to grab a thirst buster and keep going. So it was an area that I was real familiar with, and it has grown up since I have left patrol and gone into investigations. That area has now flourished with businesses. So we had a Sunoco gas station that had video that's now there or was there when it wasn't when I was in patrol. Lucky Lotto had surveillance video. It's at the corner of Hunter and Floyd. And the Family Dollar had video. It's at the corner of Hunter and Floyd across from the Lucky Lotto. And we find that the suspect prior to the shooting is coming out of Hunter Haven Apartments. Hunter Haven Apartments is now called Ballard Way Apartments, and it's off of Hunter Road. And we see the suspects coming out of Hunter Haven Apartments through a cut, and that cut's always been there. It's been there since I've been in patrol in 2007. I think every time they try to board up with fence or chain link, somebody tears it down to have that access, because the apartments, it's a cut through from the apartments to the Lucky Lotto, instead of having to walk all the way out of the apartments to the gate and then walking down Hunter Road. So the suspect comes out of that cut, crosses the road, walks straight to the Circle K, and executes Dontrell in this robbery, and then he walks back. The one good thing in this case is there was a guy standing at the Red Box about to buy a DVD. He was on the phone with his wife trying to pick a movie for the night when the suspect walks behind him. And that witness tells us, when the guy passed me, I said, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And the guy said, "Good, what's up?" And just kept walking. And he said when he turned around, he saw he was wearing a mask. And he said, "This can't be good." So he stepped back away from the Red Box, observed the entire shooting, the entire thing, gets into his car, and prepares to follow the suspect. He's unarmed. This witness is unarmed. He had no way to defend himself. And he drives down or out into the intersection of Forest and Floyd, follows the suspect out of the store back to Hunter Haven Apartments. And he's telling 911 that, which is a clue. It's a good clue for us. And the suspect actually shoots at this witness and strikes his car.
Wow.
So that's important because there's now shell casings in the middle of Hunter Road and Floyd Road. And he can also point out the fact that he saw the suspect go into Hunter Haven. Again, we really have no identification factors on a suspect. We've got all these shell casings now. We've got Dontrell deceased, and we are sending stuff out to the news, asking for help, and we make a kind of a last-ditch effort to release segments of the video. I believe we released like 3-second clips of the surveillance video, and we're real careful about this because we could release too much, and it could tamper with the case in a matter of having a witness come forward and basically they're just repeating what they've seen on the video. So we wanted to show something that could help but not hurt the case.
Got you. It's a lot to unpack here, obviously. There were many moving pieces, and I think a lot of what you mentioned, surveillance, witnesses who are not afraid to speak up, shell casings and things of that nature that could point you to the suspect, and your knowledge from being in patrol. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. The entire case was just one of those situations where it kind of all fell in line. And like I said, when you mentioned people not willing to talk. That witness was cooperative with us, but the key witness in this case was the young lady. And what we find in patrol as patrol officers or as police officers across this country, it's not only just the witnesses don't want to talk to us. The number one witness that don't want to speak to us is the female that's a victim of family violence or domestic abuse. And they are the most reluctant, and it's understandable why. They feel like nobody's going to help them. The justice system isn't helping them. But in this case, a young woman stood up for what was right. She came to us after seeing the video surveillance. And the one thing that was crucial from the very beginning when she reached out to 911 that day was she knew what was printed on the back of the reflective vest the suspect was wearing. And that wasn't never released to the news. The video that was released to them was of the suspect walking in. She tells us on the back of that reflective vest is the logo for staffing zone, for staff zone, and was able to tell us that's there. So when she said that, I knew she had something. The other unique thing was when we watched the surveillance video, all of us in the homicide unit were like, that's a Halloween mask, but what's over the mask? We can't make out what's over. There's something over the eyes. Well, she tells us that DeQuavian had placed safety goggles over the mask to be silly for their kids. And when she said that, you could see the outline of the safety goggles over the eyes of the mask, and then it made sense because in the video it was distorted. Obviously, there's high quality and low quality cameras, and we could not tell exactly what was over the mask, and when she said it, you could see it. And it was obvious. Those were goggles over the mask. And she tells us DeQuavian Solomon is her child's father. They'd been in a relationship for years. She knew the way he walked. She knew the way he moved. She knew what was on the back of that reflective vest. She knew there was goggles attached to that Halloween mask. And she also knew the pants he was wearing at the time of the murder were her pants, and pointed it out, something I'd missed as a young investigator at the time. The pants were high waters on him. He was so tall, and she's so short. I noticed you could see his socks. You could see his shoes. You could see the top of his shoes. You could see his ankles, but the socks were pulled up so you couldn't tell his skin color. But she says, those are my pajama pants. And it makes perfect sense.
So for anyone who's listening right now and they know the importance of why they should speak up now, just hearing from this case alone, a true victim who was gunned down while just trying to bring in extra money, who served our country and was in school, killed. Someone came in and you all released surveillance video. Someone decided to speak up. Someone at a red box also decided to say, hey, I need to call 911 to get this information in. So witnesses are a true element to solving cases, because a lot of the times officers get there after the bad has already been done.
So true. So true. And witnesses are able to piece together an understanding. You know, video surveillance is great if you have 360 coverage, and we don't have coverage everywhere.
Right.
And if we did, we would be living in a world that everyone fears of Big Brother, and there's no privacy. So having your own cameras on your own house is crucial. It's important. I have cameras on my house. I think everyone should.
Absolutely.
And we encourage the public to do so. But in a crime, we don't always have cameras. We don't always get DNA. It's the witnesses that come forth. Many, many, many years ago, before DNA was even a scientific item that was presented as evidence in court, murder cases were resolved in court in trial with witnesses and witnesses only. Human witnesses can put together the things that we miss out in surveillance video.
Absolutely.
What they're feeling, levels of intimidation, what they hear, what they smell. And Miss LaCoya Mason come forth to us just days after the murder and tells us that the guy in this video is her boyfriend, Quavian Solomon. And she was very brave to do so. She stood trial, did very well in trial, being cross-examined by Mr. Solomon's attorney. She stood true and strong to her facts, which I think the jury's seen that this girl's believable, that she was afraid, she'd been threatened, and now she's tired of it. And she's essentially not only standing up for herself, but she's standing up now for a victim that had nothing to do with the historical past between her and Mr. Solomon on the physical and emotional, not only that, the mental abuse that she was going through being in a relationship with Mr. Solomon. So she stood up now because there's somebody else that's been impacted.
Right. When you speak of standing up and essentially taking her power back,
Yep.
in order to convict or help convict someone who gunned down Dontrell Williams in cold blood.
Yep. Absolutely.
She took it back. Let's talk about Miss Weaver,
Okay.
the victim's mom. You spoke about her earlier.
Yep.
A lot of the times, I know when families are dealing with the unimaginable, getting that call that their loved one has died, how important is it for you all as detectives to have a strong working relationship with the victim's families like you did with Miss Weaver?
It is so important. I think, and I'll try not to get too emotional over this, but, Sergeant Robert Nicholas, also in the Violent Crimes Unit, has been basically on and off at times my partner. We've had different squads. We've been in separate squads and we've been on separate call-out teams over the last 10 years, but we've been in the unit for almost 10 years together. So we've essentially worked over 500 murders, either hands-on or assisted one another in those cases. And, we kind of feel very strong about the cases that we work in a manner of our own religion, our own mental peace. I think we both kind of explained that we're kind of mentally wired to do this job. Death is something that we're kind of numb to. Mm-hmm. And as a human being, looking at myself in the mirror, it kind of sucks. But I think when we make the comment, you'll hear a lot of us tell we do this for the mamas. When we say that, that's the human side of us, because even if a kid who's victim of a homicide or murder may have been involved in a criminal act or a gang activity or something like that, it's rare that the mama is involved in what the kid's doing or the victim's doing. The mama's sitting at home being grandmama in most cases, and she's now got to bury her baby. And I have three kids of my own, and I cannot imagine, I would never want to imagine having to bury one of my children at any cost, whether it's just an accident or some sort of criminal act or anything. And I say that we're the ones that oftentimes have to sit down and tell them things like, we're going to try to solve this. I can't make any promises to you. I'm going to try to find answers for you. And sometimes you just get that really strong feeling when you look somebody in the eyes, like I did with Miss Weaver, and I felt obligated to tell her I was going to get the answers. And I as soon as I said it, I knew I was lying, because I didn't know. I never know if I'm going to solve the case. I'm going to try. I'm going to give everything I've got, but I don't like making promises I can't keep.
Right.
And she and another family member in another case, totally separate case, have been the only two people I've ever looked at and said, I'm going to solve this. And we did. We did. Miss Weaver, days after the autopsy, case is still running 100 miles an hour. Miss Weaver reached out to me and said, hey, you and Sergeant Nicholas, we both were corporals at the time, because you and Detective Nicholas interviewed me and got the history of Dontrell, and we had a conversation. And that part of the investigation is called what we call the victimology. We're just getting to know our victim. And that's where we learned Dontrell was prior service, enrolling in school, and just in between, basically working a job that's just in between what he really wants to do next with his life. And Miss Weaver said, I'd like for y'all to come to the funeral. And that was like, how do I tell a mama no to that? It's not something we normally do. But when you get invited to something like that as lead investigator, how do I say no? And we went in there and celebrated the life of Dontrell Williams, Detective Nicholas and I. And we were a part of watching family, friends, other service members share a remembrance and love of his life. And when we walked out, we stood at the back, let the family do their thing, and Miss Weaver beamlined to me and gave me the biggest hug. And she prayed with me, prayed with Detective Nicholas, and said that God has our back. And that didn't resonate with me until after the trial, when we got notification that the jury had reached a verdict. I'm sorry, this was early. This was day one of the trial. Miss Weaver took the stand and testified about her son, who her son was. And when she got down, she asked the court if she could speak with me. And in trial, a lot of people don't understand, all your witnesses are sequestered. They can't talk to each other throughout that week or 2 weeks that the trial is going on. We can't talk to the jurors. We can't talk to the other witnesses in the case. We have to be completely separate. And she made a request to see me and speak with me for 2 seconds. That's all she wanted. And all she wanted to do was give me a hug. And she gave me a hug, and she said, no matter the outcome, you did your job. And
wow,
that, to me, that just shows how great of a woman she is. And I've only experienced that with one other case, the murder of Travis Henry, a young man from Montgomery, Alabama, that was murdered here in a set-up robbery. That was highlighted on TV One. But it's Miss Weaver is just good as gold.
Yeah.
And that trial really refuels me to continue to do this job. And that's why 10 years is still not enough for me. I'm still ready to work on the next murder.
You still have more in the tank.
Yep, still have more.
So, Miss Weaver, a God-fearing woman,
yes,
a patient woman, a strong woman, and she held on to the belief that she knew that this day would come.
Yep, she did. And she was willing, the most important thing is she was willing to accept the jury finding DeQuavian Solomon not guilty. She knew we gave the best shot. She knew we had the best case put together. And sometimes jurors don't want to convict when you don't have DNA, or you don't have all of the video, or you don't have fingerprints. And this was a tough case, as we outlined. He was completely masked up. There's no identification of the suspect. But we had LaQuoya Mason standing up. And then the key was when LaQuoya Mason told us where they lived at in Hunter Haven Apartments, we found shell casings at the back door of their apartments. So we have shell casings in the store, shell casings in the road where he shot at the witness, shell casings outside their apartment where they shared a life together. All of those shell casings matched to be the same gun. So those were puzzle pieces we had to get together, and the shell casings had to be tested at the crime lab by the GBI. So we're on a waiting table. That's why we needed time to pursue charges for murder on DeQuavian Solomon. But Miss Weaver, she knew the jurors may come back with a not guilty, or they may have come back with a hung verdict. And she told me day one, no matter the outcome, thank you, you did your best. She loved me, and she said she's been thinking of me and praying for me. And that's why we do this job. The mamas,
The mamas,
the mamas,
the Tanya Weavers out there.
the Tanya Weavers out there, no doubt.
Wow. So many elements here, and there's so many things that are working behind the scenes, and then you have Miss Weaver, who is a constant, calm, steady voice.
Oh yeah,
a reasonable voice.
Absolutely reasonable, demanding. I know she had reached out to God rest his soul, Stacey Jackson, who was our DA. She pleaded with him about who was going to prosecute her son's case and how much longer she needed to wait. Mr. Jackson was working to get that in court, and then he passes. Don Kelly steps up as our lead district attorney, and he's elected as our district attorney. And he really made one bold move. He hires Wesley Lombardis, who had left our district attorney's office. He hired him back as his chief assistant staff. And Wesley stepped up in a last-minute decision to prosecute this case. And Wesley Lombardis and I, Austin Hammock is another assistant district attorney over there, and then their investigator, Jeff Carter. The three of them, and then Don Kelly and myself, we put our heads together, brainstormed, put together some final pieces of evidence that wasn't quite ready for trial, and basically put this together and presented a very good, strong case to a jury that convicted DeQuavian. And I said this that week that trials are up and down. They're very emotional. They're hard. I know it was hard for Miss Weaver at times. But Wesley Lombardis and Austin Hammock were ready for everything that the defense, DeQuavian Solomon and his attorney, would argue. And Wesley Lombardis hit a home run in the closing arguments. I think there's no better way than what he did, outlining all of the facts, putting the puzzle pieces together for a jury to see a clear picture on who killed Dontrell that night.
Right. So, how does that make you feel? Thinking of from the very beginning, when you all were called out to the scene and you knew that this guy was masked up, you probably felt like there was not much that you all could go on to get it to trial and a conviction. Like, what does that make you feel? How does that make you feel as a detective?
Honestly, getting a guilty verdict in trial is the greatest feeling. I can remember as a patrol officer when you make your first family violence arrest and you take the person that's beating on their spouse to jail and you're looking at the kids and they're crying, and it's tough because you're taking their mama or their daddy to jail, but you know at the end of it there's good in it. There's a good feeling to that. When you get your first case in recorder's court and you present the facts and the facts are established enough probable cause to bound the case over as a young officer, that feels good. I served some time in property crimes. When you clear a burglary case and you get the suspects locked up on that, it's a good feeling. But there's no better feeling in this line of work than to put your blood, sweat, and tears, sleepless nights, away from your family, here in the city that you love, putting together evidence to get a guilty verdict by a 12-person jury and have that person sentenced to life in prison, and being able to look back at the Tanya Weavers sitting in the front row of the courtroom crying because that's the only justice they're going to get. You can't bring back Dontrell Williams.
Right.
Dontrell is a person that if I had that capacity, you bring him back. You let him live out his life here in front of his mama and grow old and have kids and grandkids for Miss Weaver. But, we're not God. And right. God has a plan. And I think God's plan was whatever Miss Weaver has experienced in her life was that moment her and I shared looking back at each other when the verdict was read guilty. So she's able to tell her story. She's leading out the mothers against gun violence and gang violence in Columbus. She's very outspoken and an advocate for other mothers. And she's reaching that calling because she's now lived that life as a victim, and she's understanding what I have to do, what I have to go through. Now, the other side of all that is I sit here and talk about how good it made me feel. But every person in that violent crimes unit, the ones that were working with me, Sergeant Nicholas, he's still in the unit with me, texting constantly, hey, how's trial going? And when he was holding Miss Weaver's hand the moment the jury read their verdict. I'm sitting at the table with the prosecution, with the state, and Detective Nicholas holding Miss Weaver's hand. And that just shows the level of dedication and pride that everyone in that office takes in every case we get called. We're leaving our family in the middle of the night. We're getting called to go work a murder for a person we don't know. Sometimes we know them because they were involved in some sort of other criminal act, but, we don't know them, and we're leaving our family. So the way we look at it is if we've got to leave our family, we might as well make our best run at it because we're leaving our family to go work a case that is probably the worst night in that family's life.
Right.
So I can't do anything. In the last 10 years, there's no way I could have gotten the guilty verdicts that I've gotten. There's no way I would be sitting right here for Ms. Weaver or the Travis Henry family without the team of people that I work with. And the system. We have a very unique system and approach on how we work murders. And I think you're seeing a lot of police agencies, even in our area or even further, doing or working murders in a similar fashion that we are.
Nice. That's a lot. that just kind of weighed a little heavy on me. But let's switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
Also, before we started recording, we talked about the solvability rate and the clearance rate. Now, for those of you who've listened to the previous episodes, the very first one we did with Chief Mathis, we kind of hit on the solvability rate here, which is higher than a national average. The rate for clearing cases here for our violent crimes is higher than the national average. What do you attribute that to? Because I don't have the number right here off the top of my head. I probably should, but I don't.
I think last year we was just under or just over 90%, which is crazy. And since I've been in the homicide unit, violent crimes unit, we have always been over the minimum standard or the minimum percentage, solvability percentage. I think the FBI ranks that you're doing a good job if you're like over 51%. So if you're solving more than half your murders, you're probably doing a good job. But we have always had a very high solvability factor. I think the only year that we even got close to being just above 51% was 2021 when we had 70 murders in 1 year. But I think the solvability factor is important, and it is so high because of the way we work the murders. The lead investigator, the unique thing that most police officers and other agencies can't fathom, and some of our officers don't even understand how this works, because law enforcement, a police agency is kind of like paramilitary. You have your ranks. You have your officer, your corporal, your sergeant, your lieutenant, your captain. And when we're in that room, we have a lieutenant, we have 6 sergeants, and we have a room full of corporals. And when whoever's lead, if the sergeant's lead, the sergeant's in charge of everything. If a corporal's in lead, the corporal's in charge of everything. The corporal can tell the sergeant, hey, I need you to do this for me. The corporal can tell the lieutenant, hey, I need your help doing this for me. And that person's in charge. Our role as the sergeant and the lieutenant in the room, or the ones on the scene, is to guide the corporal. See if there's questions that can be answered or a direction in the investigation. Sometimes with a younger corporal, younger detective, we have to keep them focusing on following the evidence, but they're in charge. And having 17, 18 other people in the room with you working a murder, you can divide up tasks so that one person is not bogged down. That means there's a lower chance of someone missing something because you have fresh eyes constantly working different angles at the same time. The first 48 hours, everyone says 48 hours. That is so true. If you don't start gathering evidence 48 hours after a murder and you don't start getting leads, then you're losing evidence. Every minute that goes by after someone's been killed, you're losing evidence. The suspect's throwing away the gun, destroying the knife, or trying to hide their tracks, trying to create alibis. And if you don't start getting that in minute one of that call out, you're losing it. And having that many people and being able to be in charge as a corporal, as I was when this happened in 2019, I don't think we would have this solvability rate. I think it's just the manner, the reason our success for solvability factor is mostly because of how we do it.
Right. Okay, so we talked about the solvability rate in clearing cases, but what about the cases that are not being solved, our unsolved homicides and cold cases?
Well, right, the first thing that comes to mind is those are the ones that they kind of haunt us. There could be several reasons why we didn't solve them. We find that the older the case is, prior to 2017 when I came in, you find there was a lot of things overlooked. Or you go back even further in the 70s where DNA may or may not even existed at that time. So we're going back and trying to test evidence for DNA now and linking them to a crime. But those cases now, I can tell you the last 10 years, the ones that I haven't solved are ones that they bother me. Josh O'Neill, Kimberly Tarver, Chong Dyer. Those are cases that I don't forget those names. Okay. I've been lead, I think, on probably 35 to 40 murders as the lead investigator. And I remember the location. But if you said, hey, Sherman, tell me about this case, you'd have to give me the location and I could tell you the outline of the facts. Otherwise, I'd have to go back and review the case and read it because it's a lot, especially with 450, 500 other murders that I've been a part of. Murder investigations I've been a part of. The cold ones are the ones I didn't solve. I don't forget those. I can tell you everything about them right now. And that's because they stay fresh on my mind because they're not solved.
Right. So it's weighing on you because they are not solved, and you are very much still committed to finding the answers.
Absolutely. And that's led to, as we discussed, the Beyond the Yellow Tape initiative.
Yes.
Sergeant Nicholas and I, as I've mentioned several times already, being in the unit 10 years, we always found it so interesting and actually historical value because we're both kind of history buffs to open up that 1970 cold case, seeing how police reports were written with typewriters.
Yep.
and paper that's like about to crumble in your hands. I mean, it is literally it's cool. And I think any human person, even if they're not a cop, they would just find that so cool
and fascinating.
So that point of it is great, is exciting for us. But now we're getting to not only just look at something old and unique, we're looking at something no one else has seen, and we're looking at something that hasn't been solved. And we're a fresh set of eyes with scientific advancements in the world of forensics and scientific enhancements as far as digital evidence. So we've got tools now that wasn't available then, and we're trying to see if anything exists that we can apply it to. So that's fun. That's exciting. And I think with the solvability rate, the Beyond the Yellow Tape initiative, the goal was to kind of reach out to everyone who's just been sitting there watching the Columbus Police Department solve this murder by arrest Quavian Solomon for killing Dontrell Williams. When they see that on the news, I think there's probably hundreds of people sitting at home. What about my loved one?
Right.
And Sergeant Nicholas and I, Lieutenant Losey, Chief Deaton, Captain Blackstock gave us complete blessing. And we've been working on an approach on how to work cold cases when we have time. And that's the biggest thing is we have to have the time because we don't want the next case to go unsolved and cold.
Right.
So that takes precedent. So it's when we have time. And that's hard sometimes for the public to understand. But when we have time, we're invested 100%. And I think Sergeant Nicholas, Lieutenant Losey, myself, and the new people in our unit, Sergeant Donna Baker and Sergeant Mike Danke. They've been in the homicide unit for years, and they have experienced. I think Sergeant Danke's been a part of solving a couple of cold cases in his career. They know what it takes to get a conviction on a cold case because it's hard. They're seeing young people in our office, new detectives, eager to do it. So you've got now's the best time to implement Let's Focus, because you've got new eyes, young detectives, and you've got experienced sergeants and supervisors over there that are motivated and driven to get this done. And this is a way for us to say, hey, we still care about you. We have not forgotten.
Right. So keeping a case alive, even years later, and I know that was the thought process behind Beyond the Yellow Tape.
Yep.
Beyond the Yellow Tape, for those of you who are listening, it started off as a social media approach. And I know specifically we said, well, we need more eyes.
Right.
So that's when we reached out to our partners at WXTX Fox 54. So as it stands right now, our first episode is set to air on Monday, April 21st.
Yep.
It's going to be airing in prime time on Fox 54. They have a 7 and 10 o'clock newscast.
Right.
And it will also coincide with America's Most Wanted, which is a show that's coming back for an additional season on WXTX. So because you pitched this, because you brought it forward, and we want to make sure that we are keeping these cases alive, because we don't want it to haunt you. We want
Right.
you to be able to find new leads, discover new leads, so that we could bring justice to the victim and their families.
Absolutely. That's the goal. When viewers watch it on WXTX, it'll land on their social media page after it's posted and shared or aired.
And ours as well.
Ours as well.
Yep.
And we want you to copy and paste it, share it. You've got to share it. Even if you know nothing about it, you've got to share it. I did a study, reached out to several law enforcement agencies, the Atlanta Police Department. I reached out to Richmond, Virginia, a couple other places. And they all indicated something we all know is social media is a huge part of solving crime.
Exactly.
I mean, you see the Columbus Police Department Property Crimes Unit has huge success in their social media page. So the initiative behind this was, hey, we have a public information office. That's Ms. Santiago, Ms. Tyson, and they took information, y'all have taken information I've provided on a case and put together a little segment that was aired or put on our social media page. And we're thankful, because the whole goal was to get somebody like WXTX to bite on it, because now they can reach out. Their viewers or their subscribers are a larger number than ours at the Columbus Police Department. So now we're reaching more people. And that's the whole goal behind any success any law enforcement agency's having in this country, is how many people are they reaching.
Right. And it's the power of partnership as well, because
Exactly.
a lot of people, they don't realize that you could do a lot on your own, but you could do so much more when you get true partners in your saddle who actually want to help.
Exactly.
And I think that's the thing that we do lean on a lot here, but sometimes it could often go overlooked when you try to do things on your own. So I think that
Absolutely.
it's a good thing. So what can viewers expect, like, for the first few episodes? I'm going to let you take that away for Beyond the Yellow Tape. What can they expect?
You're going to see the new faces of the Columbus Police Department Violent Crimes Unit. You're going to see young detectives. I think that's also going to be intriguing for our young people in the community who may or may not be interested in becoming an officer or going into law enforcement. We have a lot of young people, various amounts of experience. So you're going to see their faces, because they have reviewed this whole book of facts, interviews, evidence, and they're presenting what they know is a possible lead. In a brief interview with WXTX, you're going to see never before released photos. They're not graphic in nature of any kind, but you're going to see photos that have never been released. You may see video that's never been released. You're going to have information that's never been released. Again, though, all of the stuff that we are releasing may be new. It's nothing that could hurt the case. It's something that could forward or further the investigation. It's stuff that we as a group, 17 of us, have discussed and said, hey, if we release this, somebody out there knows something. And if that person knows something about, let's first say, this vehicle or this house or this angle of surveillance video, if someone can call us and tell us something, that's better than nothing. And I think you're going to see, not only that, you're going to see how much we care, that we're still trying.
Right.
Chong Dyer, I think, will probably be one of the first ones.
Right. You mentioned her name earlier.
I did.
And it was one of those cases that sticks with you.
Another true victim.
Mm-hmm.
Another true victim. Josh O'Neill will be coming. I've got that one almost prepared, ready to film. Another true victim. It's like Kimberly Tarver, another true victim, walking the park late at night. We have the suspect on video. We have him on video. We can see him. We just don't know who he is. We're going to release every angle of that surveillance video because now all we need is someone to tell us that guy's name is this, and we'll have our killer. We've got pretty much the whole thing on video. So we've released his image before, but this Beyond the Yellow Tape, we're gonna put everything out. We're gonna
give it everything you got.
Everything we got. It's our last ditch effort because we see the killer in the video. We can see his face. When you pause the video, it's distorted. It's blurry. But we're gonna release the video as it is, and hope that someone speaks up and says, "Okay, I'm gonna speak for Kim. I'm gonna reach out for Kim. I know who this guy is. Maybe we can find our LaCoya Mason in that murder." That's what we need is another LaCoya Mason to stand up and say, that guy is this guy. That's my boyfriend or my uncle or whoever it may be. Chung Dyer, elderly woman, prominent business owner in South Columbus, true victim, mind her own business, widowed, husband served in the U.S. Army. He had passed away years prior. She's gunned down in her home, executed.
Wow.
And we've had suspects in that from day one, just haven't been able to prove it. And we had that was actually another detective that was lead on that, and he's gone on to brighter, greener pastures and working in law enforcement still, but another agency. And I wanted that case. I've taken a run on it, and we are closer now than we've ever been. We just need the right person to come forward and talk to us on what they know. And the biggest thing is there's reward money. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it sucks to say that, but sometimes money is enticing. People feel like they're going to have money to kind of leave the area for a little while if they speak with police, turn in a suspect, or they're going to have money to create a plan in case they feel threatened by the suspect. But I can assure you that if we get information that's enough to lock somebody up, we're going to lock them up and we're going to make sure you're okay. But there's a reward money for doing the right thing. We hope that everybody would just do the right thing anyways, but we've come together with partnership, as you spoke with, and we've got money to give those who are brave enough to stand up, and we will absolutely do that.
It's all or nothing now, huh?
It's all or nothing.
It's all or nothing. So as we're wrapping up here, I know you said in the beginning that you do it for the mamas.
Yeah.
And you do it for the grandmas, the moms who probably have absolutely nothing to do with these crimes, but you want to make sure you bring justice to their families. But outside of that, what still drives you? Would you say it's solving the cases? What still makes you get up and go every day to come back and do this line of work? That's
a tough question. I could easily go back and say and reiterate the fact that there's just no better feeling. I think every person tries to find some sort of gratification in what they do day in and day out. You do have some people in the world that they find a job that's paying the bills and they're happy. They just do their 40 hours and they're happy with it. I love this job. When I got involved in law enforcement at a young age, 2007, I was 20 years old when I started here. I loved being a police officer, and I put my power as a police officer in this city on a pedestal. My personal character is high, I feel like, especially in the manner of the incident with Mark Jones, our former DA, that essentially tried to get me to lie on the stand and persuade me to lie on the stand against a young man who didn't murder a person. He was responsible for a person's death, but it wasn't murder. So I think what drives me beyond the feeling when you do close a case is two things. Actually, three. I think the first one is I think God put me here. I think Sergeant Nicholas says we're wired for this job. We just are. We're numb to death, but we also have that human moment with the mamas and with our family. We're able to turn this off and go home and be dads and be husbands. I think the second thing is our families. I could not do this had I not started in working murders in 2017. My grandmother was a rock solid support system because my children were young. And then when she passed away, I had just gotten into a relationship, new marriage to be, and she is rock solid support system for me and my three boys. And I couldn't do it without her. And my kids literally are proud. My son shares constantly. Hey, he'll share a news article with my name in it and said, "Dad, I'm proud of you." And I tell him all the time I'm proud of him, but man, there's no better feeling when your kid says, "I'm proud of you."
Right.
You don't expect it as a parent, and when they say it, it's rewarding. So my family, and then lastly, I think the other thing that motivates me is the people in the room over there in the violent crimes office. If I was working with people who didn't care the same way that I cared, it would be miserable to do this job. The city of Columbus does not know really, truly how lucky they are to have the people over there that are willing to leave their home in the middle of the night, work for hours without sleep, and care about somebody they never met before the way that we do. And I think that if you ever, hopefully no one else in our city ever gets murdered, but I think if you experience it like Tanya Weaver did, then you know how much we do care. And I think that those three things are the key motivating facts for me.
If someone is listening who knows something about a cold case, this is for your Tanya Weavers, your mothers, your victims' families. If they know anything about a cold case or even a new case, what would you say to them in closing?
I think the easiest thing is speak up, stand up. You can remain anonymous. I've done this in so many interviews. People have come forth with information. They're like, "I just don't want to testify." And I'll always be honest with them. I need the information you have right now to further the investigation. If we need you to testify, me and you can have that conversation when trial comes. I don't need you to go to court tomorrow. I don't need you to go to court from a week from now. What I have found is people at first are scared to death to tell us what they know. And then later, years down the road, when we go to a trial, they're ready then. They're ready. Time has passed and they're ready to speak up and they're ready to be seen on that bench in front of the suspect. So I think if people will just give us their cooperation early on, we'll decide whether the information they gave us is something that we need to be able to get evidence into a trial, if it's something that we need their testimony on. And so I tell people all the time, if you speak up now, you'll help me. We can talk about whether or not you're going to have to be a witness on the stand later.
Right.
So if you can help me get answers, or my coworkers getting answers to a cold case, speak up. Come talk to us. There's other ways. You can come talk to us face-to-face or remain anonymous. We can put you in the report as anonymous until we need you to be identified. We don't release those facts. We don't tell the world. People have a misconception that we tell the whole world in the news that Jane Doe told us that this, and this happened. That's not actually true.
Right.
So before we release anything, it's not until trial, and that's when everything's released into discovery, and that's if it's going to be evidence in that trial. A lot of times we get information and witnesses that provide testimony to that they help us, but we never use that as evidence in the trial, so their name's never even brought up in anything. So if you don't want to talk to us, you can email us, you can call us. We'll talk to you on the phone. We have so many ways to reach out to us now, with our violent crimes number, my phone number, Detective Nicholas. You can search us. You can also reach out to your office, Miss Santiago's office. She's Miss Santiago is here with me. She's our public information officer.
Not you turning the interview on me.
But Miss Santiago will take the information down and call us. She always does. And she'll come running down there to our briefing in the morning and say, "Hey, I got this." And it's good because that shows a lot of people don't see behind the scenes, and that's behind the scenes that's happening. And because we're like an anthill in this building.
Pretty much.
we got Chief Mathis is the queen or a king.
The queen, Queen Mathis.
He'll love me for that. But we are funneling information through 4 floors of different departments, from training to experience to active cases to patrol, and that's how we get this job done.
Absolutely. And it's crazy. It's a lot.
It
is a lot.
It is.
But this has been good stuff today. And obviously, thank you for all that you do, you and your team over in Violent Crimes. I tell Lieutenant Losi all the time, too. I was like, man, you got some of the best people working in the building up under you. And he laughs about it for sure. But again, just to reiterate, Beyond the Yellow Tape, that's coming out April 21st on a Monday on Fox 54. Make sure you all are tuning in for that to listen into some of our unsolved homicides or missing people cases. I believe we have some of those that are kind of weaved in as well, right?
Yeah, we do.
Right.
We have several missing persons that violent crimes or homicides not working because we don't have a victim's body.
Right.
But our special victims unit is actively working those.
Absolutely.
And we bounce ideas, investigative ideas and techniques off each other constantly. For instance, I've been actively involved the last couple of years with Aaron Collier's case.
Right.
Just in many depths. So we've got some leads generating on that, and you may even see Aaron Collier's case pop up. I think you've seen from your office, Miss Santiago, flyers and information that we've been putting out on our social media page. Mm-hmm. Some of those people that we've already released, you're probably going to see on the Beyond the Yellow Tape as well. But I think also I want to stress one more thing with Beyond the Yellow Tape before we go. You're not only going to see older cases like 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. You're also going to see those 2021 cases because they're cold, but they're not old. And I say that to be, we had 70 murders, and that was a year that the entire violent crimes unit was run ragged. We were solving everything we could. We still haven't forgotten about those victims, and we're going to throw information out now. We have time, and we've been opening those books up frequently, trying to see what needs to be done to tie up loose ends on those investigations. So those 21 cases are going to be mixed up in Beyond the Yellow Tape as well.
Nice. All right. Well, like you said, the work isn't done. You still got a lot more juice left in you to get it done too.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you so much, Sergeant Hayes, for being here. I know I took up a good chunk of your time, and I got to let you go back to solving those cases. So thank you so much. And for those of you listening in, be sure to stick around for our next episode of Beyond the Badge with Team CPD.
Thank you.
Thank you.